Oscar Piastri was supposed to drive for Alpine after Fernando Alonso abruptly left, but all signs point to the young driver already having a contract with McLaren. However, according to the team manager Otmar Szafnauer, Alpine won't be content with that. And it looks like Oscar Piastri could be in for a long summer if things keep up like this. Make sure to watch until the end to get fully updated on Piastri, Alpine, McLaren, and even Ricciardo. Because what will happen to him after all this fighting over one driver? But first, what are your thoughts about the situation? Do you think it's fair for Piastri to just leave and take a seat elsewhere? Comment your thoughts down below. Now, sit tight, we'll fill you in on all the latest news in the craziest story of this year's silly season. Szafnauer emphasized that Alpine had made significant professional investments in Piastri and that he would have anticipated a bit more devotion in return. There has to be some loyalty in return for the fact that we have literally invested millions and millions of euros to prepare him for Formula 1, the team manager said during a media interview. He continues by saying that Piastri still has a role in the team's long-term goals, although this seems fairly unlikely after everything that happened in the last few days. Alpine is adamant that it has the authority to compel Piastri to accept a position as a long-term F1 driver. The team is thinking about taking legal action if that does not work out, and the Australian races for McLaren in 2023. Alpine placed the driver in a single-seater last year, during which he travelled 3,500 kilometres, Szafnauer emphasised. We did 7 independent tests with him, and that is not cheap at all, the Alpine boss continued. We spent a lot of money on Piastri to prepare him for the future, and if that future is not given to us, it is logical and fair that we demand compensation. Alpine believes that the dispute over Oscar Piastri will go beyond the Contract Recognition Board of Formula 1 and end up at the UK's High Court. However, its justification for that conviction also suggests that it might be content to lose him to McLaren, and its current conflict is more about restitution than any actual chance that Piastri will be Esteban Ocon's teammate in 2023. Regarding its legal eligibility to retain Piastri's services for the 2023 campaign, Alpine is awaiting a CRB decision. Last Tuesday, over the course of a strange 9-hour period, Alpine intimated it would lose Piastri, then said he was secure through 2023, then got a public snub from him. It confirmed him as Aston Martin-bound Fernando Alonso's replacement just hours after suggesting Piastri's management looked to be examining other possibilities, including a contract to replace the faltering Daniel Ricciardo at McLaren. Then Piastri promptly refuted Alpine's claim that he was contracted for 2023 with a remarkable social media statement, adamant that there was no agreement and that he would not be competing in the car. Alpine team manager Otmar Szafnauer described the legal scenario that he thinks could potentially take place in an interview. Going to the High Court is over 90% certain what we will do, he said. If the CRB says, your license is only valid at Alpine, and then he says, that's great, but I'm never driving for them, I'll just sit out a year, then you've got to go to the High Court for compensation. There are potentially 2 scenarios that could lead to such a result. The first is as Szafnauer explains, the scenario in which Piastri's contract with Alpine is determined to be legal by the CRB, but the defending Formula 2 champion refuses to race for the team. The team feels it is entitled to compensation regardless of the contractual circumstances given what it has spent in Alpine's career thus far, during his time in its academy system and as its reserve driver this season, but the CRB may rule against Alpine. Similar rules exist in English football, where a club signing a player under 24 who is out of contract must pay a fee to the player's previous team to cover its commitment to the player up to that point in training and development. However, this has never happened before in Formula 1. Szafnauer did mention in his conversation with the media that Alpine anticipates having to show the financial value of its investment in Piastri's development, including the cost of the mileage he's accumulated in its F1 car thus far, covering a participation in the young driver test in Abu Dhabi last December, as well as running in older cars. We haven't sat down with the accountants to figure out everything we've spent, said Szafnauer. We will have to do that if we go to the High Court. As one of their conditions for competing in the tournament, F1 teams must abide by CRB decisions. While the CRB's mandate does include making decisions regarding compensation payments when they are genuinely conflicting contractual circumstances, the scenarios in which Piastri refuses to drive for Alpine despite the conflict or Alpine seeks compensation for its larger investment may both fall outside of the CRB's purview. Its authority is essentially limited to what the parties concerned are willing to accept, though it usually meets with them to try and achieve an agreement before coming to the point where it must decide for them. But if you think that's all, we're not there yet, because this story has taken a huge turn in the last hours. Oscar Piastri is free to drive for McLaren in 2023 because he never had an F1 contract with Alpine, as revealed by Racing News 365. Last week, Piastri's contract to replace the underwhelming Daniel Ricciardo at McLaren in 2023 was made public by Racing News 365. According to reliable sources at Alpine, Piastri never had a Formula One contract with the team, as reported by Racing News 365. This would mean that it's almost certain that Piastri will join McLaren for 2023. In November 2021, Piastri and Alpine agreed to a contract that included a section clarifying the team's responsibilities to Piastri. These commitments included paying Piastri's expenses, designating him as Alpine's reserve driver in 2022, and granting him a specific number of test miles in an F1 vehicle, which is understood to be in excess of 3,500 kilometers. Alpine had the possibility of giving Piastri a seat in a 2023 race if it met these obligations. Importantly, this agreement was made between Piastri and Alpine's driver academy, and not with the F1 team. This indicated that because the contract was not for Formula One, it was never registered with the F1 Contract Recognition Board. Accordingly, neither Alpine nor McLaren received any notification from the CRB of any dispute when McLaren filed their contract with Piastri with the CRB after signing the Australian. Ricciardo and Lando Norris are both currently under contract with McLaren for the upcoming season. However, RacingNews365.com has heard that McLaren plans to terminate Ricciardo's agreement. The mechanics of such a split are still being negotiated. However, time has taught us that Ricciardo's team is seeking a settlement in the neighborhood of $21 million. This implies that Alpine's only choice is to take the case to civil court. It is uncertain which jurisdiction would prevail given the Alpine's parent company, Renault Group, is registered in France, and that the Alpine F1 team is based in England. It is believed that if Alpine decides to take the case to a civil court, the team would mostly be seeking monetary compensation for losing Piastri, rather than a decision requiring the Australian to drive for Alpine in 2023. But next to this fee, McLaren are also trying to terminate Ricciardo's contract, which could also cost them millions. Because McLaren intends to release Daniel Ricciardo from his contract for 2023, his team is seeking compensation in the neighborhood of $21 million, according to information attained by the media. Although Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo are now under contract with the club for the following season, it appears that Oscar Piastri will be hired to take Ricciardo's place. This is the initial step in the negotiation process between Ricciardo's camp and McLaren, so it's unlikely that the team will accept it right now. The Woking-based team is reportedly attempting to give Ricciardo a soft landing so that he may find a seat elsewhere. If it is successful, McLaren can utilize that in their discussions to dramatically reduce the compensation. Since Ricciardo's camp probably bet a significant sum with the first offer, it is anticipated that the team would try to haggle the price down. According to Australian media, if McLaren decides to let Ricciardo go, he wants to be paid top dollar. The outlet cites a number of sources when it claims that Ricciardo is seeking compensation in the amount of over 14 million euros. It should be noted that if McLaren and Ricciardo actually begin negotiating, this sum may very likely decrease. According to reports, Ricciardo would consent to prorate his income from next season's earnings elsewhere. So picture this. Alpine pays the veteran 10 million euros to join. Once the 10 million has been subtracted, the amount is 4 million, and McLaren pays 4 million euros. However, the entire 14 million will still be in Ricciardo's bank account if he is not given an F1 ticket. It makes sense that Piastri would first be signed by McLaren as their replacement driver before Ricciardo is actually dismissed. Additionally, it is likely that this legal dispute with Alpine will be very expensive. Piastri's contract would be purchased for at least 10 million euros. A total of 24 million euros might be spent to change the driver. All in all, it could be a really expensive summer for McLaren. Let's hope for them that Piastri is worth all the hassle and extra money. What are your thoughts on Piastri? Will he be able to perform in the McLaren next year? Or should he have chosen to drive for Alpine instead? Let us know in the comments below. That's all for now. Make sure to subscribe to our channel as we upload at least 4 times a week to make sure you receive all the latest news. Like the video if you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.